طيب، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين، إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين، آمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، ورمضان كريم. تقبل الله منا ومنكم الصيام وصالح الأعمال. First, I would like to welcome you all and thank everyone for attending. محدثكم دكتور تيسير الطيب حسن كاشف، Director of الطبابة Advanced Training Center. في البداية وقبل كل شيء أحب أشكر المهندس كريان بلة، مهندس الاي تي في الطبابة، وصراحة كان لمجهوداته بعد فضل الله عز وجل الأثر الكبير في قيام هذه المحاضرة، فشكرا يا باشمهندس. ولو في صوت شكر فهو أولا وأخيرا بعد الله عز وجل الباشمهندس ريان، يعني لها وحدها فهي الصخرة التي تتكسر عندها كل عقبات الطبابة التقنية. وما نحن في إدارة مركز الطبابة للتدريب المتقدم شخص ضعيف الإدارة، أو سكرتارية التدريب والإدارة المالية الممثلة في شخص الأستاذ صلاح الدين الزبير، له الشكر إلا عوامل مساعدة. والشكر أجزل الشكر لكل الإدارة العليا بالطبابة من خيرة علماء السودان في الداخل والخارج لدعمهم المتواصل وتبنيهم بهذا النهج الكريم الذي يهدف لنشر المعرفة والوعي للجميع بتجرد تام ودون قيود أو حدود. الشكر يقف عاجزا امام شخصكم الكريم بروفيسور عماد صلاح، الاب الروحي للطبابه، نحن بنسميه ذا جود فاذر اوف الطبابه. طيب، طبعا كلنا لقينا الاحصائيات والاكسبوننشال جروث في عدد الحالات والكيرف ودخول ولايات جديده للاسف الشديد. احنا كنا بنتكلم الاسبوع الماضي في محاضرتنا السبت الفات عن عدد الحالات 1111 مع الدكتور مصطفى هاشم من المملكه المتحده بريستول. امس عدد الحالات المسجله واشدد على المسجله بلغ 1964 حاله، يعني تقريبا في ظرف 6 ايام عندنا 100 حاله جديده يوميا. من 13 مارس بدايه تسجيل اول حاله لغايه 14 مايو عدد الحالات المسجله 1964، ولسه ربنا يلطف. الناس بتتكلم عن ماذا بعد الكوفيد 19 والابعاد الاقتصاديه بتاعته، هل نحن مقبلين زي ما دائما نحن بنقول على ازمه اقتصاديه عالميه جديده كما حدث؟ والامر يتخطى بالتاكيد الابعاد الاقتصاديه. في بيبر الان بيتكلم عن البانديميك افكت اون بيشنتس without الكوفيد 19. في السبت الماضي كما اسلفت تحدثنا عن محاضره بعنوان الكوفيد 19 انفكشن كنترول بوليسيز ان كور ريسورس سيتنج مع كان دكتور استاذنا مصطفى هاشم من المملكه المتحده. والاسبوع قبل السابق تحدثنا بمحاضره بعنوان What we didn't know about COVID-19 كان باي بروفيسور محمد المعتصم عبد الباقي. المحاضرات طبعا كلها موجوده في قناتنا بتاعت الطبابه على اليوتيوب، واعقبتهم محاضرات ثانيه موجهه لاهلنا وزملائنا من خارج المجال الطبي. ونذكركم غدا ان شاء الله محاضرتنا Biostatistics for Physicians بدكتور قسم السي يوسف احمد. اما الليله باذن الله مع سبق جديد من مركز الطبابه للتدريب المتقدم وضربه جديده للكوفيد 19 ومحاضره قيمه بعنوان كورونا فيروس 19 كلينيكال اند ثيرابيوتيك ابديتس باي دكتور فتحي النور الزين، يعمل بمستشفى فين سلطان ميليتري ميديكال سيتي في المملكه العربيه السعوديه إذا كونسلتنت انفكشوس ديزيزز FRCP إدنبرا. استاذنا فضيله الدكتور فتحي النور الزين رجل لا نزكيه على الله، علماء السودان الذين ترفع لهم القبعات فعلا عن جداره واستحقاق بدون مجامله، وله الشكر والتجله اذا انه لم يدخر جهدا رغم ضيق الوقت والمشاغل وفرق التوقيت بيننا ان يفيض علينا بعلمه وكرمه. نحن درجنا نسمي المحاضرات دي ليالي الطبابه الرمضانيه لما يصاحبها طبعا من بركات وروح المشاركه العلميه الطبيه من زملاء المهنه داخل وخارج السودان. فضيله الدكتور فتحي النور الزين، الساده الحضور الكريم، مرحبا بكم من جديد. If you have any questions please feel free to ask at the end of the presentation. واذا لقيتم اي مشاكل في النت ممكن تخشوا بدون كاميرات. استاذ الدكتور فتحي النور الزين، تفضل مشكورا، جزاك الله خير.
طيب، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. كل عام وأنتم بخير ورمضان كريم. في الحقيقة I would like to thank الطبابة for the invitation to give this lecture, but I have a special thanks to الأخ دكتور تيسير وللأخوة الباشمهندس ريان for their efforts to make this lecture real. في البداية طبعا if you allow me نترحم على أرواح زملائنا اللي هم توفوا بسبب هذه الجائحة في داخل وخارج السودان، ونسأل الله أن يتقبلهم قبول حسن. I also like to commend our colleagues in Sudan fighting the disease, especially our young physicians in the corona centers, and particularly those who are volunteering to do this job. In this 45 minutes, we should discuss the background of the disease, clinical presentation, diagnosis, trials of medication, and if we have any time more, we can speak about some infection control issues. As you all know, the disease started in Wuhan in China with a report of a few patients who had pneumonia of unidentified etiology into extensive pulmonary infiltration and hypoxia. So at the time, it started in Wuhan, as I say, in China, and then it started to spread within China. Can we take this out here? Okay. Can I just put this down? Yes. Sorry for that. So the first pneumonia case was reported on the 8th of December 2019. And then the WHO was notified by the end of December. And by the end of January, the WHO declared the disease as a public health emergency before it was declared as a pandemic on the 11th of March. So this is the virus, and you can see number of spikes on the virion, and these are very specific, giving it the shape of a crown, and this is the cause of the name of coronavirus. And as you know, we had the coronavirus which have caused the SARS disease before, and this virus is actually similar to that coronavirus, and that's why it is called SARS-CoV-2. The first one is the SARS coronavirus. And also it is similar to bat coronavirus. You know that bats are important animals that harbor the coronaviruses. The analogy is very close to the coronavirus. And then finally we had it with a distant relation to the MERS-CoV or the Middle East respiratory syndrome that occurred in the Arabian Peninsula. Now, if you look at this phylogeny, you can see the top one over here. This is our SARS-CoV-2, which is quite distant from the Middle East respiratory syndrome, but close to the bat coronavirus and close to this animal, which we call the pangolin. And this animal is suspected to be an intermediate host for the MERS, for the coronavirus. This is the market, this is the fish market or the animal food market in Wuhan, where the disease has originated or at least suspected to have originated. And this is the bat which had caused SARS before, but it's also now suspected SARS is MERS. The coronavirus now is suspected to be related to this bat. And this is the pangolin animal. This pangolin is thought to be an intermediate for the COVID or SARS-CoV-2. Now, there are many coronaviruses that are more famous for common cold. 3 particular coronaviruses have caused an epidemic disease and a high mortality. The SARS-CoV occurred in 2002, giving a mortality of 11%, but you can notice up to the end of the epidemic, less than 10,000 were affected in the whole world. And similarly, the Middle East respiratory coronavirus, which occurred like 10 years following the first outbreak, has caused a very high mortality. 1/3 of the patients have died. But again, all the cases in the world were not more than 2,500, which is just equivalent to what occurred in one country in a day during this pandemic. And SARS-CoV which is increasingly. The mortality is not identified yet for different reasons, but it's definitely lower than the initial outbreaks. This is just until this late afternoon. We can see almost 4,500,000 cases are confirmed, with almost 303 global deaths related to the COVID-19. Now, the reason it is difficult to estimate the mortality in the COVID-19 or the SARS-CoV-2 is because it is difficult to get sure of the denominator. We don't know how many people in the world are affected or infected by this virus. Another factor which will affect the mortality is, of course, the availability of health services, which have been strained even in developed countries or high-income countries. Leave aside what will happen in our country or the other developing countries. Furthermore, a number of cases are reported to have cardiac arrest out of hospital, like 58% increases the out of hospital cardiac arrest in Italy, and possibly these are related to coronaviruses. Now, there are other collateral mortalities, I call it, because people die from other diseases because of the overwhelmed facilities. A patient with heart failure may not find an ICU bed to be admitted. A young patient with severe acute asthma may die because of lack of an ICU bed, because they are all occupied by COVID patients. And in our society, without much education, people might refrain from coming to the hospital just because of the worry that they might be labeled as coronavirus, as if now it is a stigma. So there are unforeseen causes of death and mortality related to COVID-19. Now, this is a virus. Very important is this part of the virus, which we call the spike, because it is in the spike where there is an antigen that will allow the virus to attach to the receptors on the cells of the humans and allow its entrance inside the cell. It is this spike where we should direct our antiviral activities, and again, it is this spike where we should direct our vaccines in the future. This is the receptor. This is the receptor of the for the virus, and it is an angiotensin converting enzyme receptor. And as you know, we use these receptors for the drugs, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, like an angiotensin converting enzyme angiotensin receptor blockers. These receptors are found in different organs. They are found in the lungs, in the pharynx, in the kidneys, in the liver, the heart, and the blood. And for this reason, COVID-19 is a multi-system disease. Patients present with gastrointestinal symptoms, they present with respiratory symptoms, they could have heart attacks, and they could have CNS, strokes, and other diseases. This is just to highlight the virus is over here, the receptors is over the human cell, the virus through the spike get attached to the receptor, get internalized, get released into the cell, and by its own produces its own proteins, duplicates its genome, and produce more viral particles and exit the cell to infect other cells. So just to get into the picture, I thought I will share with you some of the cases we have followed in our hospital here. This is an 80-year-old male, and I like you to remember 80, and that is a male because disease is more common in the old, or not more common, but rather more serious in the old. It's probably higher in males. This man has leukocytic vasculitis and hydroxychloroquine, and I would like you to concentrate on hydroxychloroquine because despite hydroxychloroquine, he developed the COVID disease. Actually, some people were proposing to use hydroxychloroquine as prophylaxis, but this man has developed the SARS-CoV-2 despite hydroxychloroquine. He is also on diclofenac, and I also like you to remember it because in the beginning of the pandemic, people were worried, and there were some rumors not to use diclofenac or non-steroidals, it could worsen the COVID disease. He is on codiaban, and codiaban is an angiotensin receptor blocker. And as we just alluded to previously, there is a receptor which is used by the virus. So the man was admitted with a fever, with cough, and his chest X-ray showed infiltrates in the left mid zone, specifically peripherally appearing as a homogeneous ground glass haze. And I know you have been told about radiology by Professor Abdelbagi last week. And if Abdelbagi talks about radiology, we have to shut up, of course. But this is typically a presentation of COVID pneumonias, where you have peripherally located ground glasses, shadows extending on lower bases most of the time. His COVID PCR was positive, and if you just look at the parameters of his investigation, he had lymphopenia. Lymphopenia is characteristic of COVID infection, and the lower the lymphocyte count, the severe the infection. Similarly, his D dimer was high. It's reaching up to closer to 2, which is quite high. His ferritin was over 1,000. LDH was high, and CRP was high. All these are high inflammatory markers which will put your patient into a moderate to severe type of COVID pneumonia. So for this reason, this patient received tocilizumab. Tocilizumab is a blocker of an interleukin-6, and luckily he improved on this treatment. The second patient is a younger patient than the first one. He's 65-year-old male. Again, disease is more severe in patients above 60, more even severe in patients above 80. This man is non-diabetic, again on diclofenac. He presented with fever, cough, and cough. His chest X-ray similarly showed mild left pleural effusion and bilateral peripheral air space opacity noted on both before this X-ray initial admission and then later on worsening. His COVID PCR again turned to be positive. His inflammatory markers were similarly raised, and because of that he received tocilizumab treatment. These are the inflammatory markers. The D-dimer was high, the LDH was high, the ferritin was high, it went down lower after treatment. His lymphocytes were low, terribly low, indicating a severe disease, and his CRP was rising. So as we just mentioned, the disease tends to be probably more higher in men compared to women. The reason why this is not known, however, it may be related to the estrogens and the female hormones. Again, we have a disease which you can, I don't know if you can see it, but it is much higher in this group of people, those who are above 60, particularly in those who are above 80. So it is a disease of old male as compared to younger people. Now, if you could see, we are very excited at the beginning of the outbreak. There are very, very few children who are affected by the virus. Actually, there are few young adults who were affected by the virus. And that gave a false sense that younger people might not be infected, that younger people might not have the disease, and to some extent people went out on picnics because they are not going to have a severe disease. That was a false perception, because during the outbreaks in New York and other cities and in Italy, younger people have got severe disease, and there was some mortalities among younger people. More importantly, if young people get infected, they will carry the virus to their loved ones at home, elderly, grandmother, grandfather, and that will be a catastrophe to such patients. Now, as I said, the virus was found to be not affecting many children, but as of just last week, there were a cluster of cases, severe cases of Kawasaki-like disease, a hyperinflammatory shock in children where you have extensive skin eruptions and associated shock. This is actually a group of children from UK, like 8 patients who have developed severe Kawasaki-like disease. There are 8, 6 of them are Afro-Caribbeans, and 4 of them were exposed to COVID-19, presented clinically with fever and a rash, and a conjunctivitis, similar to the toxic shock syndrome, and they have significant gastrointestinal symptoms, in addition to polycystitis with ascites, pleural effusion, pericardial effusion. Very important, there is no significant respiratory involvement in this group, despite the fact that 7 of them, they required mechanical ventilation for some other reason. Their inflammatory markers was very high, ferritin, procalcitonin, D-dimers, and 2 of them tested positive for SARS-CoV. 1 patient died. This report was in the Lancet just last week. And only 2 days ago, on the 13th of this month, came a report from Italy of an outbreak of severe Kawasaki-like disease at the Italian epicenters of the SARS-CoV epidemic, and that was an observational cohort study. And you can see, now these are the cases of Kawasaki disease from 2015 to 2019, but suddenly there was a jump in the number of the cases of Kawasaki disease. And that's particularly true between the months of February and up till April of this year. So it was thought to be related to SARS-CoV-2. Actually, the study included 10 patients. 7 of them were boys and only 3 were girls. And 8 of these 10 patients were positive by serology for IgG, IgM, or both. 6 of the patients had cardiac manifestations. Actually, 1 of them had an aneurysm of the coronary arteries. And Kawasaki disease with the shock syndrome was witnessed in 5 of the patients, 50% of them, and a macrophage activation syndrome, where we call it MAS, was seen again in 50% of them. 8 of them required an antisteroid. So really severe disease, and we should be on the look for this in our patients. Now, the risk factors for severe disease include hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, chronic respiratory disease, cancer, and very few patients were devoid of comorbidities. Now, on the mention of cardiovascular disease and hypertension, there was a worry about the use of ACE inhibitors and ARBs because of these ACE receptors utilized by the virus to enter the cells. However, the American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology, have put in a statement that patients should be advised not to add or remove any RAS-related treatments beyond action based on standard clinical practice. So if your patient requires ACE or ARBs, you don't need to stop them because of the sake of COVID-19. You go by the clinical indication. And the same thing happened with non-steroidal and COVID-19. There were queries to the FDA about using this drug during COVID-19, and the FDA had said at this time, FDA is not aware of scientific evidence connecting the use of non-steroidal like ibuprofen with worsening COVID-19 symptoms. So you can use the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, and you can use the ARBs or the ACE based on the clinical indications and not stop them because of the COVID-19. Now, this is a great slide. This is the way you get the transmission of the infection. Now, you have an infected person here, and he coughs, he sneezes, he talks, or worse, even if he sings, and spread droplets which will fall within a meter. So these droplets could fall in the hands of somebody, they could fall on the face of somebody, they could fall on the eyes or the nose of another person. Or they could fall also on surfaces, tables, doors, windows, and then get to a susceptible individual. So the susceptible individual will get it either through direct contact by touching a surface, by touching his nose, by touching his eyes, by touching his mouth, or he could get it indirectly by touching the knob of the door, or by pressing the elevator knobs, or by taking a book. So it can be everywhere there. Now, very rarely the virus is spread through aerosols. And this occurs only in situations where, not only but mostly, in situations where you induce aerosolization like through bronchoscopy, intubations, cardiac resuscitations, tracheostomies, and so forth. This is the time where you can lead to aerosolization and the virus stay in the air to affect whoever is there in the room. So, having said that, it is clear that to stop the transmission of the disease is number one, to find this person who is coughing, test, and isolate. To keep away from him, at least you keep 2 meters, because you don't know him or her, of course. So that's why social distancing, that's why we should keep more than 2 meters. And to ask people to wear a mask. So if he coughs, the mask will stop it, and the susceptible individual having a mask will stop it. But I must stress on this. Mask priority is for healthcare worker. If there are extra masks, people can use mask. But the priority for mask is healthcare worker. The population can use any material to make a mask. Any clothes, they can make a mask. And leave surgical mask for the healthcare workers. Now this is stability of the virus on different surfaces. Copper, cardboard, the virus can stay on this surface for up to 3 days, 48 hours, 24 hours. So if somebody touches the door, up to 24 hours you might get the infection. So be wary that on any surface you might catch the virus by putting your hands and carrying it. So what is the solution? Is to wash your hands all the time. That's the only thing that will not transfer the virus from a surface to yourself or to your family. So wash your hands all the time. Simple to say, very efficient measure to stop the transmission of this virus. Now, there is an important phenomenon, the R naught. You might hear of the R naught, and this is the number of people who can get infected through one infected person. If one person got infected, how many people he can pass in the infection. Now, for SARS-CoV-2, one person could infect 2 to 3 people, about 2.5. So if this is an infected person, he will pass it to 2, the 2 will pass it to another 4, it will become 4, become 8, 16, exponentially going through. Now in some situations where the environment will allow, the virus R naught might increase, it's dynamic, it is not a fixed thing. And like for traveling, sometimes the R naught might go to 4, so 1 will infect 4, 4 will infect 16, 16 will infect, I can't count it. And it can go on and on and on and get a lot of transmission. So that's why the public health measures are so important. Because there are people whom we call super spreaders. One person is infected, he infects maybe up to 20. Anybody who infects more than 10, we'll call super spreaders. So those super spreaders can lead to big outbreaks in the environments where they stay. So there is a balance we have to keep, a balance between enjoying our life, going on a normal activity, and taking care of the infection and trying to flatten the curve. Flattening the curve is important because you don't want to overwhelm the health facilities which in our case is already scarce, and we need really to flatten the curve so we don't get crowding in the health facilities in our country. And with the best way to do flattening of the curve is probably going through case isolation, so you keep testing, and then you find those who are infected and you do home quarantine or some sort of quarantine, you do social distancing, closing the schools, and all the measures we are doing now. But obviously that is at the expense of economic factor and other social factors. However, these are important to stop the transmission. Now the incubation is around 4 to 5 days, but it can go from 2 to 14 days. Now why this is important? It's important because somebody got exposed today will have to isolate for 14 days, the period of the incubation period, before you can say he is free of the disease. Of course, that depends on the degree of exposure and the protective measures that were taken. Now, WHO classified disease into mild, asymptomatic, and this is important because these asymptomatic people could transmit infection. These are the ones we may not be able to find unless you do random testing to the community and find out who are these people. Some of these people might go in to become diseased and have mild symptoms, upper respiratory tract infection symptoms, standard symptoms, before they go and develop a moderate or severe disease. And this category is actually smaller. Now this is the severity of the disease. 81% have mild disease. 81% have mild disease. And only 14 have severe disease with the pneumonia, but they do not require much of oxygenation. And 5% are the ones who are critical, that are the ones who have septic shock, who have got respiratory failure or organ failure, and they require critical care. We don't want to reach to this level because we don't have the facilities to face patients in the lack of the ventilators, and that's not a problem. That's the whole world problem. Even in the developed countries, they cannot match the requirements of an extensive hospital availability of ventilators and others. And it is here where the mortality is high. This is a group where mortality can go up to 50% or even more in the elderly in particular. So what should you do? Now once the patient comes to the hospital, you have to triage your patient. You have to have a system wherein you know how to triage your patient and send them to the appropriate room for isolation. Now we must adopt a system. We must have our own guideline to allow us to know what to do and who is required to do what. These are very essential. Everybody should know his job description, so we will be more organized in tackling this patient. There are so many guidelines, WHO, IDSA, Italian, CDC, whoever. Very confusing. But I think we should stick to our Sudanese protocol guideline. That's what we should all agree on. If you don't agree to it, you can ask to improve it. But we should adapt to the COVID-19 case management protocol mentioned by the Ministry of Health just in April 2020, and this is actually based on a WHO recommendation, and we should try to all to stick to the guidelines, and if you have to deviate, you have to explain. So what is it? There are questions when the patient comes in the hospital. You will ask questions to see whether this is suspicious of COVID or not. Fever, cough, sneezing, gastrointestinal symptoms, whatever, and then go to scoring system. Anybody who is in the area of COVID will now require 5. Or if he had a contact with a patient, will take 5. Or he had a travel somewhere where there is a COVID, he will take 5. But now, because the COVID is the environment, everybody is 5. So you only need 1 to put you into a suspicious COVID. If you have fever, you get it. This is loose, but it is better to overdo it than to underdo it. If you have malaria, you have fever, and you are 5 already, so you are 6. So you fit for COVID. And that is important because we don't want to lose or to override diseases that are treatable. We must be very sure that there is no other condition which is causing the symptoms, malaria in particular, typhoid, other infections. So sometimes even we can have double infections or co-infections. You have the COVID and you have another condition. Only lately I had a patient who had both brucella and brucellosis, brucella actually bacteremia and COVID isolated from the patient. So be careful not to override or to lose diagnosing common conditions. And once you have decided this is the patient with COVID, then you go and do the nasopharyngeal swab. And I just leave you this video for a minute. So you have seen that the person who is taking the swab is very well protected, wearing a gown, wearing gloves, and wearing a mask. And it will be done in a room, preferably negative pressure room or a ventilated room, and not many people around there, right? So, but always remember to wash your hands if you do it. And I will leave you again with a small video so you know how to do washing of the hand. It is important. So, very important actually to wear the mask. Now, there are two types of masks. There is a surgical mask, which we can wear it wherever we are into the hospital, and there is an N95 mask. This is an important N95 mask when you're doing this nasopharyngeal swab, if you're doing intubation, any aerosolized producing procedure, you should use the N95 mask. It's very important to know that N95 mask, if you have a beard, may not fit properly, and then you may not be protected. And this again, very important to do a seal check, because sometimes if you don't do it proper, it may leak and you may not be fully protected. Okay. So this is the way it should be dressed when it is available. You have the mask according to the situation, and face shield if needed, and your gloves and your gown. Of course, it depends on the availability of the material on our side. Now, the clinical presentation. The clinical presentation is varied, but I want to draw your attention to the extreme fatigue the patient might have. Of course, they have respiratory symptoms and fever, and lately there is a loss of taste and loss of smell. These very peculiar symptoms to COVID-19, and 88% in one study were found to have these symptoms. Some of the patients will have conjunctivitis, so be on the look for conjunctivitis. These are symptoms and signs to help you to differentiate between some local infections and this infection, but nothing actually in the end than doing the test if you are suspicious about the disease. There are lots of skin rashes which have been discovered lately. This is a COVID dose where you can see skin rash, so be on the look for these things. It might help you to quickly jump to possible diagnosis. And there are different types of skin rashes that have been seen. Now, what is interesting is that about 13% of patients with COVID were found to be positive for acute pulmonary embolus on pulmonary CT angio. So this is very important, because people might die of pulmonary embolism rather than the viremia or the viral infection, and this has to be prevented. This is actually an autopsy finding of venous thromboembolism in patients with COVID-19, a prospective cohort study, which is just recently been published. And in this, 12 COVID-19 patients from Hamburg in Germany, 58 had deep venous thrombosis. So it was that 50% of patients had deep venous thrombosis on autopsy. And as you can see, this is a major pulmonary embolus in one of these COVID patients. And this is a big branching deep venous thrombosis of length in such patients. So what is the message from here? I think the message is not to forget low molecular weight heparin DPT prophylaxis. There is yet no time to say treat with anticoagulant, but the minimum you can do is to give them low molecular weight heparin prophylaxis similar to other sick patients. So please don't forget to prevent DPT and pulmonary emboli. Now, acute kidney injury. Patients might present with acute kidney injury, and this is a recent case report from the New Journal of Medicine, and where this histopathology again showed the virus into the kidneys, leading to acute kidney injury and renal failure. Again, large vessel stroke as presenting feature was found in young patients, so be on the wary in patient who is young and who has a stroke. It could be COVID-19. So it is really bizarre sort of presentation. Even Guillain-Barré syndrome had been reported as a presentation of COVID-19. So how we diagnose COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-19 is either we look at the virus particles or we look at the virus antibodies. This is coming up as a diagnostic test. Now, the virus particles can be detected by reverse transcriptase PCR, and the virus antibodies can be checked by the COVID-19. Hello? Evet, Esir. Okay, welcome. What's the English one? Okay. So, as I say, diagnosis is dependent on isolation of the virus particles or the detection of the virus antibodies. However, will give you a very high sensitivity and specificity of reaching up to 98.6%. It's very important that a negative PCR does not rule out COVID-19. Now, what specimen to take? The virus has been found in many sites, including the urine, the blood, the feces, and the upper and lower respiratory tract. But these urine, feces, and blood have not been used for testing. The best to take the test from is the upper lower airways, bronchoalveolar fluid, or bronchoscopic washing, but these lead to increased infectivity of the healthcare worker. For that reason, we only go to nasopharyngeal swabs as a diagnostic test. Interestingly, sputum is coming out as a possible specimen for diagnosis, and if that proves to be true, that will be very useful because you can do it at home. Patient can spit the saliva into a sputum pot or even in tissue and get it tested at home even. So this will reduce the work on the healthcare workers, will decrease the need for personal protective equipment, and will decrease the risk of infection to healthcare workers. In this study, sputum was able to detect up to 85% of patients who were detected by the PCR testing. So we'll have to wait and see if it can be used for diagnosis. Now, what is the IDSA guideline for testing? Initially obtaining an upper respiratory tract sample rather than a lower respiratory tract sample, as we said. If the initial upper respiratory sample result is negative and the suspicion for the disease remains high, then they suggest you collect a lower respiratory tract sample. So one test is not enough if you are very suspicious. Here is just to show you the viral duration of shedding and the antibodies formation. So you can use the antibodies only after the first or second week, during the late in the first or early in the second week. Now the treatment of COVID-19. The simple answer: there is no treatment. And once you see loads of medications which have been tried, then you know there is difficulty with treatment. And actually you can pick out whatever you like to use, but you have to use it within a clinical trial, because so far there are no approved medications for COVID-19. What is important is the supportive care and the critical care management of these patients. This is a panel group which is made of, you can see American College of Physicians. Every group in the United States have been included in this guideline. Now, what did they say? They do not recommend use of agent for pre-exposure prophylaxis. So you do not use it as prophylaxis. And you do not use it if you have post-exposure. If you are exposed, you don't use medications for this. This is what they agreed on. Now, the panel recommends no additional laboratory testing for asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. So you just leave alone. Only when they develop symptoms you can do investigations. And at present, no drug has been proven to be safe and effective for treating COVID-19. So it is only to be used within clinical trials. Many poor prognostic factors, as we have mentioned in our patients, you have to look for, so you categorize your patients as mild or severe. As we mentioned, all of this have been raised in patients who had severe disease, all these factors I just mentioned. And very important, this disease seems to behave in two phases, an early viremic phase and a late inflammatory phase. And it is the late phase which really causes the major problems, leading to ARDS, leading to thrombotic episodes, and leading to shock and sepsis. Just to mention, this is a comparison use of remdesivir. You must have heard of remdesivir in the news. This is a small study which is on compassionate use of remdesivir, which showed some effect. It might be of benefit. Then immediately another study came from China, a large randomized trial, which has been abandoned because the cases stopped flowing there, but they found it is not associated with a difference in time to clinical improvement. And finally, one study is just been released by the NIH, but it is not yet being peer reviewed. It is not yet mentioned in the journals, but it does suggest there is some benefit, although very small. So based on this small study, the guidelines, they suggested remdesivir to be given for patients in hospitalized patients with severe disease, or those who are requiring oxygen supplementation, mechanical ventilation, or ECMO for their treatment. You all heard about the use of hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine, a small study from France, which showed it does reduce the viral load, but does it reduction of the viral load translate into clinical improvement? It was a very small study to come with conclusion, and actually it was withdrawn. Hydroxychloroquine, some people say the low dose does not benefit, so go to high dose. Study from Brazil, they gave high dose, and in the end, mortality was found to be higher in the high dose, and a number of patients had ventricular tachycardia and prolonged QT. So the guideline was clear that not use high dose chloroquine. And this study showed no difference between people who had hydroxychloroquine and the placebo, and so no evidence as of today to say hydroxychloroquine is useful. And again, even addition of hydroxychloroquine to azithromycin, there is no benefit as of yet. There are some drugs which can be used to block the interleukin 6 and interleukin 1, and in some of them there are a bit of benefit, but more studies are needed before it can be approved for treatment of such patients. Now, use of convalescent plasma, not much data. I think, and I hope this will prove to be useful because it is a cheaper sort of treatment, and I will hope our colleagues in the Ministry of Health will keep a record of all the patients who had developed COVID, and if this proved to be a useful treatment, they can be summoned to be donors for plasma which can be used in future patients. So what is the take-home message? I think the take-home message is SARS-CoV is a serious viral infection. In the past, people were in the early phase, people who used to say it is just like influenza. And no, it is not just like influenza. It is more serious than influenza. It is the non-infectious complications that can lead to fatal outcome. As you have seen, pulmonary emboli, you have seen ARDS, and you have seen the shock syndromes, all in the second phase of the disease. And the disease is serious in the old and with those with comorbid illness. So our real message, please try to avoid visiting our old people, the grand, وفطور الجمعة. يعني we have really to be careful, not really to gather around our elderly grandmother, grandfathers till this outbreak is over, inshallah. It's very important to know that younger patients are not immune to poor outcome. They are not immune to poor outcome, and we do not want them to transmit the infection to the old people in the house. Any treatment so far, no effective treatment. Any vaccine so far, no vaccine. Hopefully within the year or next year we might have treatment and vaccine. So really what remains is testing, contact tracing, and isolation of those infected with the virus, which is quite essential. What I think is needed in our country is to have big awareness that the disease exists, that it can be fatal, and that it can be prevented with effective measures of isolation. Thank you so much. Thank you.
خيرك. طيب انا هفتح باب الاسئله والنقاش. عندكم في الحته بتاعت الميكروفون دي حتتحول لشكل بتاع كويشن مارك، فاي واحد عنده مداخله او عنده سؤال يضغط عليها عشان نقدر نجاوب على ذلك ان شاء الله. حقيقه دكتور فتحي انا يعني محاضره قيمه كتر خيرك. من الحاجات الصراحه اللطيفه هي او المزعجه اللي هي difficult mortality estimation due to the absence of denominators healthcare availability او حتى عباره عن collateral mortality. الحاجه الثانيه نتكلم من ناحيه molecular point of view. يعني انت ذكرت انه الريسبتور بتاع الفيروس هو الاي سي 2 ريسبتور. طيب ده ما ممكن احنا مثلا يدينا كده انسايت انه how to develop a vaccine او how to develop مثلا treatment مثلا for such a virus؟ طبعا الموضوع ما بالبساطه دي، لانه حتى المفروض نعرف التايب بتاع الريسبتور. ممكن يكون تايروسين كاينيز ريسبتور، فاحنا لو قفلنا الريسبتور ممكن to affect other functions in the body. يا ريت برضه لو تدينا فكره بسيطه عن الموضوع ده. الحاجه الثانيه اللي داير استفسر منها هي الهيرد اميونيتي. الناس كلها الان تتكلم عن الهيرد اميونيتي اللي هي مناعه الطبيعه، وهل نحن فعلا الخيار المتاح قدامنا التعامل معه زي ما تعاملنا قبل كده مع الانفلونزا انه تو ابلاي الهيرد اميونيتي او لا؟ كتر خيرك برضو. انا صراحه كان في سترايكنج داتا ريجاردنج اليوز اوف هيدروكسيكلوروكوين، كان حاجه مفيده جدا. ومن الحاجات برضو الكونتروفيرسيال الايام دي هي اليوز بتاع الكونفاليسنت بلازما. هل هي افكتيف؟ هل هي واعده؟ ابليكابل ولا ما ابليكابل عندنا؟ الشباب ممكن اذا عنده اي زول عنده مداخله. فاطمه. طيب بروف سامعني؟ دكتور فتحي. طيب يعني دكتورة صلاح.
الو السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام. كيف حضرتك؟
كيف حالكم؟ الله يسلمكم. ما اعرف دكتور فتحي معنا في الخط ولا ما معنا؟
دكتور فتحي يا بص هو عمل شطل الميكروفون. طيب دكتور فتحي معنا؟
لا انا معاكم، انا سامع
من جديد. ايوه
طيب كيفك يا دكتور فتحي؟ والف شكر على very rich and comprehensive talk. الحقيقه يعني كلام جميل جدا زي ما بقول to the point. الحقيقه عندي 3 comments او 3 questions. الاولى انه it's a comment انه واضح انه until now ما عندنا حاجه solid غير البريفنشن، ولسه الثيرابي ما موجوده. لكن انا الحقيقه شايف انه one element في البريفنشن is missing is actually to improve people's immunity او preparedness for the infection. يعني unfortunately ما في واحد بيتكلم على preventative therapy based على ال common knowledge based on evidence. يعني things which actually improve the immune system. يعني معروف مثلا انه we know that فيتامين سي وزنك وبعدين فيتامين دي. يعني احنا عارفين في ناس ماتوا كثير بسبب انه فيتامين دي بتاعهم كان deficient. يعني المورتاليتي ريت ناس قالوا 30 times more الناس اللي عندهم فيتامين دي deficiency. فليه الى الان الاشياء دي are not actually put as preventative strategies for the public؟ يعني ليه احنا ما just to inform the public please make sure you have enough vitamin D in your diet, enough vitamin C in your diet. كويس. يعني الاشياء دي which are very cheap لكن nobody يعني cares to inform or make sure the public actually oblige and follows these, which is very sad. الحقيقة الواحد very saddened انه we have evidence انه بالذات الفيتامين دي انه الناس اللي عندهم لو فيتامين دي داعي، وده في الغالب one of the reasons why البلاكس في امريكا ماتوا. ف unfortunately there is no talk about simple preventative strategies other than social distancing والى اخره. الحاجه الثانيه الحقيقه الكومنت والكويستشن برضو the sad thing about most of the studies انه they don't follow the usual orthodox wisdom. Orthodox wisdom in infectious diseases بتقول انه treat early. يعني when you have an infection you treat early. و يعني it is sad انه people are not starting treatment early on. They wait. الثيرد كومنت هو على البلازما. الحقيقة البلازما الكويستشن مارك حتكون is it actually a feasible option في السودان بإمكانياته. فحتى لو احنا لقيناه و maybe used maybe for selected patients, it cannot be generalized لأنه I suspect إنه we don't have blood bank facilities all over the country. The three issues اللي أنا بسأل عليها: why are we not concentrating on simple preventative measures other than social distancing and contact tracing, like improving people's immunity? Why are we not doing studies on
بروف عماد
early
معلش يا بروف it's better انك تشغل الكاميرا معلش يا بروف.
Okay. Why is it not better to treat early rather than wait؟ يعني ريمديسيفير قالوا يدوه للناس السيفير، يعني نستنى لما الواحد يبقى critically ill، ومع انه maybe it's better to start early. وطبعا اللوجيستيك ايشو مع البلازما. فدي الثلاثة كومنتس واسئلتي للدكتور فتحي، وجزاه الله خير، يعني محاضرة قيمة جدا.
Okay. طيب thank you Prof. صلاح وشكرا يا تيسير. Two questions I can mix together اللي هو البلازما. الكويستشن الخاص بالدكتور تيسير عن الريسبتورز و why we don't utilize it. There is nothing they have not looked for. يعني الستاديز اللي going around about this COVID, we are having so many studies. يعني every day we'll get a study. So if you look into this slide, if you look into this slide, can you see it?
Yeah, أيوة.
Yeah. So if you look at that slide, you can see they working on the virus entry and ACE inhibitors to block the receptors.
Yeah.
As of today, there is no evidence they will be as effective. Right?
Unfortunately.
Now, herd immunity, to develop herd immunity, which the people have tried in the United Kingdom in the beginning, to develop herd immunity, you need an infection in the community which can reach sometimes 40 to 60% before you can develop a true herd immunity. And obviously this will be at a cost, طبعا. There will be some deaths before you can get onto a herd immunity. And maybe when you get the vaccine and you get a good coverage, حتى الvaccine, if you don't get a good coverage, you will not develop a good immunity in the community to stop this virus propagating. So it is possible, but it is at an expense. بالنسبة للبلازما أنا I think إنها it is a cheaper option for السودان لأنه it depends on إننا to support the blood banks بإنهم to obtain البلازما and to obtain recovered patients or recovered contacts and check them for antibodies. This is not something which will occur tomorrow. It will take some time before we get a good serology. Actually, positive serology per se does not mean the plasma will be protective. We have to look for specific antibodies which are protective, right? But not everybody who is serologically positive is going to be giving a protective antibodies. So it may be useful, but it is not something as for tomorrow. Now, it is interesting, Dr. Imad, what you're mentioning about strengthening of the immunity. There are lots of trials which have gone on to this. If I remember, the Ministry of Health in Sudan, in their protocol, they are mentioning addition of vitamin D and vitamin C in patients. And I have to recheck this, and I don't know if Dr. Anasma is around. She might add to this. Like it is being mentioned. Now, does it really lead to good effect? It has to be studied. Unfortunately, most of the studies which are published on COVID, they are not yet peer-reviewed. So you are not really sure what is going around. They are not randomized controlled trials, and you know it better than me. Imagine the best evidence for medicine is a randomized controlled trial. Like there is definitely going on to be more studies to confirm what to use. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور عماد. شكرا دكتور فتحي. عندنا معانا دكتورة روميساء. تفضل دكتورة روميساء.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, welcome Romeisa.
Thanks, Doctor, for the outstanding performance in the session. I really enjoyed every moment of it. My question is, it can really sound really bit stupid, but I'm going to ask it anyway. My question is, I think you've heard about Google syndrome.
معلش أنا ما سامع والله كويس دكتورة.
دكتورة ميساء معلش بس حاولي أرفع صوتك وأبعد من المايك شوية معلش.
Is it better now?
يحصل لحد ما أحسن.
Okay, I'm going to try to write
كويس ميساء تفضلي.
Yeah, the question is, I think you've heard about Google syndrome or compuchondria, when people start to develop symptoms of things that they read due to repetitive information, fear, stress, anxiety, and so on. I want to ask, how do we deal with the people when we are advocating about prevention? How could we include this whole population? Because I feel like here in Sudan we have two extremities. The people that are really concerned about the disease still reach a moment of overwhelming, and people who really still think that coronavirus is a political issue. So how can we advocate for this? And another question that's being covered by Dr. Ahmad. That's all.
أيوة.
واضح السؤال اللي
أنا سمعت بوليتيكال بس.
معلش يا رميسات الشبكة عندك شكلها كعبة شديد معلش.
هاي بس لو أنت سمعت يا دكتور تيسير توصل لي هو إذا كان أنا سمعت. والدكتورة ميساء بتقول is a political issue in the. Is that what she's saying?
I was talking about the advocacy about the prevention, of the disease itself. How can we include the whole population that between two extremities, the people who are overwhelmed?
Can you write the question in the chat, please?
Okay, I'm gonna write it down. Fine.
Yeah, please write it in the chat.
Okay, it's fine.
شكرا جزيلا لك رميساء. طيب فاطمة، عندنا سؤال من دكتورة فاطمة. دكتورة فاطمة تفضلي.
I have two questions. The first one is, first of all, I would like to thank the doctor for his constructive presentation. Thank you so much. My question is that I'm wondering whether there is a clear guidelines for pregnant and lactating women who are infected with COVID-19. This is number one. The second question is that how about the safety of the use of antiviral drugs in the management guidelines?
Safety of what medicine?
Of antiviral drugs. The use of antiviral drugs.
In pregnancy?
In pregnant women and lactating as well.
Okay.
The third question is that what about the preventive measures of post-delivery for pregnant women who got delivered to their child? Yani, what will be the measures for the newlyweds?
Okay.
Thank you.
These are very good questions. هي شغالة في الأوبشن قاينة شكلها.
لا أبدا.
Okay, these are very good questions. Excellent questions. There is actually a guideline for the management of COVID during pregnancy. Now, all the medications we have mentioned are not approved for treatment even for men. So you are only using it in a trial basis. And you know, during pregnancy we don't include people for trials. So the drugs are not really strongly indicated that you can go and give it to a pregnant lady. Now, transmission of the virus from the pregnant to the baby is not, to my knowledge, be recorded. But you know, during the lactation, the baby has to be, he can be breastfed, but the mother have to wear a mask because of the close contact between the mother and the baby. But to my knowledge, there is nothing to stop the mother to lactate the baby. There is a good guideline actually, and if you send me your email or Dr. Taysir, I can send it to you about pregnancy and lactation.
Okay, that will be great. My second
Sure.
question is that what is the role of steroids and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs?
Excellent. Another excellent question. Now, non-steroidal is not contraindicated during COVID. That's according to the FDA approvals. It is not contraindicated if you need to give it, but you don't need to give it because of the COVID. You can use paracetamol, but for some reason you need non-steroid. It's not contraindicated. Now steroids is not indicated for the treatment of COVID pneumonia. However, it may be indicated if the patient developed ARDS. At some stage, steroids might be indicated, or in the case of septic shock where there is a need of steroids. But for the disease itself, it is not indicated.
Okay. Thank you so much, doctor.
Thank you.
اوكي شكرا لك يا فاطمه. معانا الدكتور ابراهيم. تفضل دكتور ابراهيم. دكتوره رميساء اكتبي لنا على الكويشن ما تنسي.
في بعض الاسئله على الشات يا دكتور تيسير.
I saw.
في سؤال من الدكتور وائل اللي هو for healthcare worker, is the surgical mask considered effective or still N95 should be considered? Now, any situation where you have to have aerosolization, like you're doing bronchoscopy, like you're doing intubation, or you're doing cardiac resuscitation, or you're doing tracheostomy, anything, or if there is anything which can lead to aerosolization, you need an N95 mask. You need an N95 mask. Ideally, it should be fit tested because everybody will have certain fitness for the N95, but you may not have this. But at least you can do the seal test, which I have showed you in the video. Please go back to the video, it is in the CDC, to get sure you wear the N95 properly. N95 now can be used for the whole day. It can be actually used for multiple days, provided you keep it in a plastic bag or something with your name on it, because of the shortage of the N95. Okay. I got a comment here from Dr. Asma that they are Sudanese guidelines for pregnant and lactating women as well, which is great, I think. So please stick to our guidelines, as I mentioned before. And this is a really great effort. We have to commend our people who are looking after Corona in Sudan. Excellent work. Thank you. Questions? Hello?
اتفضل دكتور ابراهيم. هو الاسم كاتب الايميل DRAS ابراهيم.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.
وعليكم السلام.
كيف الحال دكتور زيد؟
يا مرحبا اهلا.
احمد معك، احمد سعد الدين.
اهلا يا احمد.
كيف الحال؟
مرحبا دكتور احمد.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, very comprehensive and as Dr. Imad mentioned, up to the point. I have one question regarding the heparin or anticoagulation in those patients, and actually it depends on the D-dimer as well. So the D-dimer is a very good marker to start anticoagulation. Plus, of course, the clinical situation of the patient. Now,
أحمد معلش الصوت لو ترفع لي الصوت.
I spoke about the anticoagulation in patients with COVID.
Yes, yes.
The D-dimer plays a good marker to start it.
That's right.
Of course, the patient tried. And there is a very good comment by Dr. Imad is the use of the to boost the immunity. And I will add to that. Of course, there is. It's non-scientific, but the people are using the garret as we all know. Now, I don't know if you have any knowledge that there is in Ira University
hello.
الصوت ما واضح؟
Any knowledge of what?
استعمال القرض. أنا ما أعرف. لأنه صراحة واحدة من المشاكل في السودان we don't have a lot of medication to start with. يعني حتى الهيدروكسيكلوروكوين and chloroquine it's not available as far as I know. مش limited amount of or stocks. Plus all the new evidence, it's not that effective, isn't it? So I think
to be honest, Dr. Ahmed, to be honest, there is nothing in the medication which is suggested for the treatment of COVID which is peer-reviewed and tested by real studies. So it is all anecdotal data on everybody's trying something. The Chinese have tried their herbal medicine.
True.
And they used it. I think you can use whatever you want as long as you are sure it is not, number one, do no harm, and number two, you do it in a clinical trial to see really it works. If you wish, you can use the garlic and you can just get sure it is not harmful, and number two, it is in a trial, see people who use it and people who did not use it and come out with a conclusion. Who knows?
Yeah, that's why I think we need to send a message to our people back in Sudan, although I know they are overwhelmed and everything. But we have a lot of scientists, we have a lot of pharmacists who can just start to look from different angles and start
That's
this
true.
Project.
Actually, I got a question from Dr. Roa Ahmed about the same question. How about herbal medicine? Any conclusive, reliable evidence? And I think I will hope here she will do study to come out with this evidence. This is a good area for study.
Absolutely. And regarding the antiretroviral, I mean, we used in our hospital, we use the Calitra. And
yes.
Now the Americans are coming with the remdesivir. Do you think it's a matter of political commercial issues or something that
no,
why remdesivir not other antiretrovirals?
I can't comment about the other. لكن بالنسبة للكاليترا it's being used in China and it was found not to be useful. But one drawback about it is that it was used late in the disease. And you know the viremia is early in the disease. So maybe that's why it was not effective. Now they are trying to use it in a combo. They both use Calitra with ribavirin and sometimes with interferon. But so far there are no good trials to indicate to use it or not to use it.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Now there's another question here. About what about reinfection by COVID-19 on people who already infected and became negative? Now there was a number of cases who tested positive after they were tested negative, and there was a worry that they might have got reinfection, but it was not proven it is a reinfection. It is most likely because the viral shedding is intermittent, they might have become positive, become negative, and then the viral shedding changed and they became positive. No good evidence to say that it is there is possibility of reinfection. What about lifelong immunity? No, we don't know about lifelong. We don't know actually how long it takes this immunity when you get it after this infection. So far, nobody knows, but in SARS it took a few years. But even if you get a vaccine, we don't know how long it's going to protect you. So nobody can know this answer.
And then
now the question, does procalcitonin rise in viral infection? No, not usually. Most of the COVID patients have their procalcitonin to be normal. Maybe when they get secondary bacterial infection, then you might see a rise of the procalcitonin. But usually it is not raised in viral infection.
عندنا سؤال برضه من الدكتورة هنادي. تفضل دكتورة هنادي. تفضل دكتورة هنادي.
السلام
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
مبارك عليكم الشهر وتقبل الله تعالكم ومشكور الدكتور على المحاضرة الطيبة. الله تعالى.
ايوه هنادي.
some cases يعني هي يمكن ملاحظة I noticed some people diagnosed as positive of malaria.
زي what?
They are diagnosed as positive for malaria
Yes.
nowadays, but they have symptoms like loss of smell and loss of taste.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
بالذات انه نحن يعني ما in the season of spreading of malaria.
Yes.
هل الكوفيد
This is a very, very interesting question, and I really think we should be on the look for this. As I told you, I have a patient who came in with symptoms suggestive of COVID, and he was positive, but also he had fever and rigors, and we found he had brucella. So he had both brucella and COVID. Now your patient who had malaria, he could also have COVID, because COVID even can go asymptomatic. So there is no reason why not to have both malaria and COVID. So I will ask, if you diagnose COVID patient and he had symptoms of fever and you suspect malaria, actually the Sudanese guideline requests that you test for malaria, because malaria is treatable. We don't want people to die of malaria. COVID we cannot do more, right? So don't be sort of dissuaded to check for other infection if you get COVID. And also the same thing, if you get another infection, you can test for COVID if you suspect it. Loss of smell, loss of taste, a severe fatigue are quite suggestive of COVID.
Yes, but I think they just diagnosed as positive for malaria and there's no care about COVID-19.
Sorry? أنا ما أسمعك، لكن what I'm saying, you test for malaria, you test for COVID. Patient could have either, but he could have both. You can have both. Both malaria and COVID can occur together.
Unfortunately, there is no care about them, because I hear some patients more than 15 or 20, they said they tested malaria, positive malaria, and they have quartum tablets or artemether injection, but no care about COVID-19. يعني ما في أي اهتمام أصلا يعني.
طيب هنادي
نعم.
هنادي are you a physician ولا؟
clinical pharmacist. Clinical pharmacist.
Clinical pharmacist. Somebody can do study and look at the people who have malaria during the COVID season and do serology later on and find out whether they had COVID or not. That's another interesting area.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
عبد العزيز، تفضل يا عبد العزيز. عبد العزيز تفضل. دور عبد العزيز لا ذكر.
طيب إذا عبد العزيز ما في أسماء البدري. ها؟
تفضل يا أسماء.
طيب نرد على أسماء ولا عبد العزيز معاك؟
تفضل يا أسماء. عبد العزيز اسمه ما ظهر عندي.
ها؟
اسمه ما ظهر يعني. طيب أنا دكتورة أسماء إذا معانا.
قال أسماء البدري. يا تيسير.
يا بوس. السلام عليكم. معلش أنا في باك جراوند نويز. في باك جراوند.
دكتورة أسماء ما معانا في الكويشن. ما ظهر عندنا في الكويشن. طيب دقيقة. الو دكتورة أسماء. الو
الو
دكتور فتحي، دكتور اسماء معنا في الكويستشن.
لا هي ارسلت على الشات.
طيب لانه ما ظهر عندي هذول نعم. ايوه.
فسؤالي انه one of my colleagues tested as positive after 1 month of cure because of another contact with COVID patient. So that means هي بتسأل انه والله هو he had another infection or she had another infection, and the answer
yes
probably not, لأنه الفيروس you might continue shedding for up to 6 weeks up to 2 months. الحين عندنا patient دلوقتي في المستشفى 60 days and still testing positive. What I think has happened, the positive testing the second time for asthma's friend is probably continuity of the first infection. It's not a new infection.
Okay.
الله يحفظك. واضح؟
اوكي.
نعم.
طيب في شخص ثاني عنده سؤال غايته في الكيو، وما في سؤال ثاني يا فتحي. انا اعتبر نكتفي بهذا القدر. شكرا جزيلا لك، ربنا يديك الصحه والعافيه، ما قصرت. نلتقي معك ان شاء الله في سانحه ثانيه، وشكرا لكل الحضور اللي شاركوا معنا اليوم. شكرا كثر خيركم. ان شاء الله المحاضره حنرسلها في القناه بتاعتنا بتاعت اليوتيوب باذن الله تعالى. شكرا جزيلا دكتور عماد، شكرا جزيلا دكتور فتحي، شكرا اساتذتنا الكرام وزملائنا الذين شاركونا اليوم. كثر خيركم.
Thank you so much. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا. الله يكرمك دكتور فتحي، يديك الصحه والعافيه، بارك الله فيك.
الله يخليك.
الله يسلمك.